Um, should I just go ahead, or do you want to say a few things? Okay. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have basically set up this session to discuss how the current season, the monsoon, has been evolving. Whether there are any deviations from what we've seen in the past, how and what kind of implications this hold for other areas, particularly around food security, agroeconomics, and of course, water availability, water scarcity, the social implications of changes in patterns that dictate the monsoon. We have four panelists with us today, and all of whom have their own area of expertise in this broad subject, talking about adaptation, vulnerability, meteorology. Without too much delay, let me just introduce our panelists for the day and take the discussion forward. I believe Dr. Janamani is going to join us soon, and Dr. Janamani is a senior scientist at the National Weather Forecast Division at the IMD. He is an expert in reading monsoon variability, heat waves, heavy rainfall, fog, atmospheric physics, air quality, and aviation meteorology. Devendra Sharma, who is an agricultural trade policy analyst and a very well-known voice among media. He's known for his research on policy issues concerning sustainable agriculture, biodiversity, and intellectual property rights, how they intersect with environment and development, food security, poverty, the application of biotechnology and hunger, and the implications of free trade agreements, free trade paradigm for developing countries. Abhinash Mohanty, who's a program lead, risks and adaptation at the Council for Energy, Environment and Water. He's been involved in designing decision-making toolkits for effective policy-making around these intricacies of climate change and the risks that they hold, sustainability and environment resource management. His work has been focused around risk assessment and assessments of adaptive capacity, the solutions to address the adaptation gaps. He's developed evidence-based policy research frameworks on climate change impacts and health and risk assessments, and has extensively worked on water management and climate change financing. He's also a reviewer of the IPCC AR6, the impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability chapters. And finally, we have Dr. Anjal Prakash, who's a research director at the Bharati Institute for Public Policy at the Indian School of Business, and a lead author for the IPCC second working group report of the sixth assessment cycle that just got released in its entirety. His work focuses on water and climate change, urban resilience, adaptation, and other social aspects, gender, class, caste, and inclusion, issues that are quite important in the context of South Asia. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to be a part of this. I would have actually loved to start with Dr. Janamani, because would have wanted to get a status of the monsoon of the current season, given the start and stop nature that we've seen so far. We've seen reports of deficits from several parts of the country. I believe more than half the country is in deficit, and also large excesses that have come in very short spans of time. And this is reminiscent of many monsoon seasons that we've seen in the last 10 years. In fact, over the last 5 years, the discrepancies with onset and with the progress has been quite stark. Maybe when he joins, we can get an update from him on what on how this compares with what was forecast, what was a part of the long-range forecast that the IMD released, what's expected in terms of this temporo-spatial distribution of monsoon, and what are the factors that we should be wary of, particularly as it pertains to agriculture and water security. But with that context, maybe let me move on to Devenderji. We know now that we've always known that monsoon is a big lever when it comes to our own GDP. A lot of our country depends on agriculture. Much of it is rain-fed or is indirectly dependent on rains, even if irrigation systems have been put in place. Given an added complexity beyond the monsoon has been global supply chains. Food supply chains have been particularly under stress. Even though there has been a dilution of concentration over the last 30, 40 years in who exports and who imports, it's still quite concentrated. We see 85% of all food coming from the same 20 countries and going to the same countries. And India holds a unique place here. We are a large economy with a large population, lot of resource inequalities within our landscape. I just want to get a sense from you of how this year the monsoon has been behaving, maybe particularly when it comes to its implications on agriculture, whether we are yet to see some carry-on effects from how the pre-monsoon period was, and also to whatever extent possible how this relates to global supply chains of food and our own food security. Please.
Well, thank you very much, Shanshan. I recall we used to have an agriculture minister, Mr. Chaturnan Mishra. And Chaturnan Mishra would often say that he was not the agriculture minister of the country. The real agriculture minister was Mr. Monsoon. I think it sums it up very well as to the role monsoon plays as far as India's agriculture and food security concerns are talked about. I think having said that, what is important and what you mentioned and you raised is how is the present monsoon playing up. But I think first of all, as we all appreciate and know that monsoons have a tremendous impact on India's food security, and so does climate change, and both of course are interrelated. So having said that, I think the biggest fear that scientists have, or the biggest fear policymakers have, is what will happen to India's food security in the years to come, especially if the kind of a shock that the country received in the wheat harvesting or prior to wheat harvesting season, when extreme heat wave had brought down or the yield levels by about 15%. And that clearly tells us that it is a serious issue, the climate aberrations. But I think the climate aberrations can also be impacting monsoon in a very serious way. We have seen this year also, soon after the monsoon struck Kerala, there is a kind of a lull now, and in large parts of the country, there is a gap as far as the rainfall intensity and rainfall distribution is concerned. We also have seen news reports which tell us that in Maharashtra, presently there is a 41% gap in rainfall, and in Assam we have had a huge deluge over the last few weeks, and so there are two extremes that the country is encountering, and in between, of course, there is a dry spell. I would say, when I say dry spell, not in that particular technical term, but all I'm trying to say is that there is a kind of a gap between what was expected and the kind of rain that has come. Yes, over the years, whatever happens with the rainfall impacts country's food security, and also in a way, I would say the feel-good factor. When the IMD makes its predictions every year, there is a kind of a feel-good factor which prevails in the country or for the economy. And if there is a shortfall, you can see the so-called so-called market sentiments begin to operate, which means the prices begin to go up and so on. But all I'm trying to say is that that particular sentiment this year looks to be okay, because the indication are that we will have a monsoon. But the definition of normal is something that I think we need to debate upon, because it may be the total quantity may be the same, but actually what happens is that one area receives massive rainfall, the other area is devoid of rain, and then of course in between we have different kinds of distribution happening, and that of course has its impact on the food production systems. One of course is the sowing area, which or this sowing intensity gets affected. The other of course is also the humidity and other factors adding on to insect attack and diseases and so on. So all these have a cumulative impact, which of course hits as much as we are more worried about, as far as the country is concerned, we are more worried about production levels. But I think more important is what happens to the farmers' welfare. And we normally ignore that aspect. And I have seen many a times farmers actually bear the brunt of monsoons going awry. And I think that is a big factor in countries' food security and also the income security for the farmers. Now, having said that, to your question, what happens to supply chains? Actually, I think the war has given us a loud message. You very rightly mentioned that from the Russia-Ukraine region, there were 30 countries which were dependent on food imports from that particular region. Now, these were the countries who were, for whatever reasons, they believed that the global supply chain can address their food security concerns. I think that was an outdated and a flawed economic thinking. I think the world has now to realize, especially after the war, that becoming food self-sufficient is the priority for every nation. I'm not saying every nation can, but to whatever extent you can, every country should try to become food self-sufficient. If you remember, in India, last 4-5 years, economists were lashing out at farmers, blaming them for building up that surplus year after year. We had 100 million tons at one particular stage, and people were saying, oh my God, why should we have so much of carryover stocks? And much of it will go for rats and rodents and so on. And what we need is to diversify. We don't need to produce cereals and so on. All those things were said, if you remember. And now, after the war, when there was an opportunity erupted for exporting wheat, all those economists have suddenly gone quiet on the crop diversification front, and they are now talking about that we should be exporting more, we should be finding a foothold in the international market, and so on and so forth. I am surprised as to how come this sudden change or U-turn in the economic perception has prevailed, or I thought at least they should have been concerned about the crisis that is emanating, especially after intensive agriculture had taken its toll in northern states in India. Now, that is something which clearly tells us that perhaps the dominant narrative is what we need to address. And I particularly, if you ask me, I'm not much worried about what happens to the global supply chains. I'm more worried at each country becoming self-sufficient in food grain production. And I think that's a lesson which should be very loud and clear from the war situation. Let's not forget, the war is not the only factor. Even prior to war, in the month of February, the international prices had zoomed to a level which had crossed the 2007-2008 World Food Crisis figures. And don't forget, in 2007-2008, when the world was hit with this food crisis, that was 15 years back, 37 countries had faced food riots at that particular time, at that particular period. We don't want to go back into the same situation, but the world hasn't learned any lesson, and we are going for same kind of speculation and commodity trading and so on, as a result of which we witnessed before the war, the prices zooming up. Now, monsoon deficiency is going to add on to that kind of a situation that is already built up. And any shortfall or any drop in productivity levels or total production levels would eventually also see more pressure on not only international trade, but the price is zooming up and it's becoming difficult for the poor to accept that quantity of food grains. We know the FAO has recently told us that about 200 million people have slid below the poverty line or the hunger line. And they are saying that about 50 million people in 43 countries are just one step away from famine and starvation. Now, that gives you a clear picture that those countries which were relying on food imports had instead focused on developing capacity or capability to become food self-sufficient, wouldn't have faced the same kind of economic crisis that they are in today. And I think that is where a country like India has to be very clear that we have a combination of factors that we have to see before we try to see whether we can compromise on our food security concern, whether we can depend upon global supply chains or not. I am not someone who says that these chains are not important, but what I'm trying to say is more important is to build up your own capacity to produce. And that is what I think MS Swaminathan had said sometimes back when he said that the future belongs to nations who have food, not to those nations who carry arms. So I think this message is loud and clear, and the war has shown that the world cannot be dependent on the supply chains. The world should become, self-reliant or self-dependent or self-sufficient as far as food grain production is concerned. Why I'm saying this is just to end up with one example or illustration. In 2005, 2006, it's not been, very far in recent times, but in 2005, 2006, we committed a wheat blunder. There was no shortfall in production, but the government of India allowed or asked the companies to go and buy directly from farmers. They did it. They mopped up every grain possible, as a result of which, when we had to look into our PDS requirements or the buffer stock requirements, the government realized it didn't have enough. So they asked the private companies to convey or to tell the government as to what quantity of, how much quantity they were carrying in their stocks. And they refused to divulge. They refused to divulge, as a result of which India in the next 2 years, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, imported 7.1 million ton of wheat at a time when there was no shortfall domestically. And this import price was more than twice what we paid to our farmers. It had become a kind of a scandal at that time. And the BJP, which was in the opposition at that particular time, actually wanted a CBI inquiry into it. The point I'm trying to make is, imagine if we didn't have this surplus that we carried for the last 2, 3, 4 years, and which addressed the issue of hunger in the pandemic times. We would have also been carrying a empty, bowl standing in the queue for importing food. But let's not forget, last time in 2005, 2007, the world had at least stocks to sell it off to us, but this time there are even those stocks are not available. So the point I'm trying to make is we have to be doubly cautious here. And one, of course, look into monsoon and climate change, and second, plan for our trade policies and so on, so that we ensure that we do not compromise on our food security.
Thank you so much. There's quite a bit to unpack there. You mentioned a lot of things, from sowing and the real implications of the monsoon and how farmers have to respond to it, to national protectionist measures, how reliance on a global food supply chain, how that might be challenged with newer realities of climate and of the process of redrawing geopolitical alliances that seems to be ongoing right now. I hope we have some time to get back to them, because they pose a lot of interesting and important questions for us. But before that, I'd like to bring Dr. Janamani into the conversation, just to get an understanding of how the monsoon has been behaving compared to how the IMD, how we expected it to behave. The post onset, the progress has been, at least looking at the chart, seems to be atypical. The patterns themselves seem atypical. Are there any? Why has this been? Is this a correct assessment, first of all? And secondly, why are we seeing the monsoon behave the way it is right now? Does it fit into, over the past several years, there's been this narrative of the new normal. Although that new normal is marked by very high levels of variance, so and deviation. So I don't know whether it can be called a normal. Does this fit into that pattern that has been pointed out repeatedly? Yeah, the floor is yours, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, good morning, all my, these friends, and particularly the media, and also the previous speaker also. He covered, I think, a lot, actually, application. So, and good night to see, good to see, actually, all friends, and those who, were in Goa, and this is the second, I think, attempt by Gunjan and your group also. And we are happy, actually, to see that this platform is growing also. So that only you can do it, actually. That is my appreciation, personal appreciation, because that is the, through this platform we can, share the issue and problem also. So what we can and what we are not capable also. Because as you know that the challenge already shared by my previous speaker, and when I come to the, already in the batting field. So you can imagine that the, you pass through so many hiccups and all those issues. So, so I will be mostly, I welcome actually all, as I see the number of participants also. So I will just request to look at the slides and the limitation I'm telling, actually. So, so through this platform, I can convey that you may have so many questions, but the science is not, that enough to answer all those queries. Like every monsoon differ from other monsoon, and when we look at 2022 whole June month, you don't have any, easterly over say Kolkata or Lucknow or normally Purvaya jo hai pani lata hai. But where are those easterly? They are missing completely in June month. And all these, westerly or southerly, Paschim and Dakhin Paschim. So that goes and hit the mountain for 15 days, 20 days, as if all the rain from Odisha, Bengal, Bihar has gone to Assam and Meghalaya. So that's why, the rain occurred at that time is, if you see the week rainfall or daily rainfall, so all those rain would have occurred, say, something like 1,000 square kilometer or 2,000 square kilometer, and you are getting 1,000 millimeter. So that would have come to this 3,000 square kilometer. Had there been easterly or some Bay of Bengal turning, because we, this EBIC book tells that monsoon southwesterly hit the mountain, become easterly. So that Purvaya comes to up to Lucknow by this time, up to even Uttarakhand. Those all are not there, actually. So if you ask me what is that further region, I cannot tell, because they all linked to one features, actually, that scientists will look into in a long run, or some kind of nature publication will come. Actually 2022 June was like this, actually. Okay, so in that context, I am happy that you have organized in a right time. I will, I don't know how much time I will move, but I will surely try to show some of the slides that I have. Okay, whether it will address the issue you were flagging, or yeah. Can you see my slide? The slides looks okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, what I am telling, actually, the ultimate objective is, to reduce the impact, actually. And monsoon variability, that is the mystery, I will tell. The first line when we study the monsoon is the variability that what's coined, actually, is very challenging and extreme also. Although you get a dry spell for month or weeks, and you get, a wet spell, like in Northeast India, or like previous Maharashtra in July, something like 15 to 22nd July. And to tackle these, actually, only solution is the, tailor-made forecast or customized prediction or impact prediction based on the users requirement. That is growing actually. So if you will also monsoon 2022, that is the thing. So highlight of the top, definitely monsoon and we. Whenever we talk about monsoon, we must read actually a lot of literature. So that I will request. I don't entertain these days, who start from very basic. I just simply, because I don't have time actually. When you talk about, extremes like Northeast India having, 1000 millimeter, where are the, for me to tell these very basic actually, that Northeast India is vulnerable for heavy rainfall and flooding. It is not occurring first time. You have a similar flood in 1995. So somebody has to Google these things actually. So then you can focus on 2022. Okay. So number one is that one has to, search the Google actually to get the basics. And the IMD criteria, I should not tell actually, like more than 200 millimeter is extremely heavy. Okay. More than 600 more than, 60 millimeter is heavy rainfall. Okay. So there are some kind of conditions because every country follow threshold actually. Those threshold are disaster or impact specific. If rain over Delhi cross 60 millimeter, it will have things to worry actually. Okay, if you are driving, if you are doing something, so it has to be worried. And climate change and monsoon. See, when we were in Goa, I told one thing that the intensity and the the variability or the kind of quantum of rainfall, once we are telling extremes are increasing, that means the dry spell period, say earlier it may be 3 days, it is increasing. Like you have seen this monsoon in some parts of India, you get a very prolonged dry spell, suddenly 1 week rainfall. So we can see Northeast India, very long spell of extremely heavy rain. These are the impact of the climate change. So nobody should ask, if Delhi record tomorrow, say like last year, it was having 6 to 8 heavy rainfall. If it records this year, say 10 to 12, it's understood that the intensity and duration of extremes will increase. So it should not be, asked to me actually. It has directly to be quoted because that IPCC tell that Indian scientists also part of it. The government is a part of it. Okay. So that is one thing. And as you know that the day of, giving a prediction like heavy rainfall over Delhi, that kind of consumption, that kind of users, I think that era is over. Now you have to target the user, target the kind of, sector, whom you are giving, whom you are serving actually. So that, transform from what the weather will be to what the weather will do to particular growth groups actually. Like agriculture, for agriculture, it is, they don't need a heavy rainfall of yoga. What they will do by that? You have to tell 3 to 4 days in advance so that they will avoid, put pesticide, put fertilizer. Because if you tell just 1 hour, wo kya karenge? Because they need, long duration forecast, they need extended range prediction, their utility. But like power sector, where like aviation, where the person sitting in his control room, he is near you, so they can change the the way they are managing. And for this part to do, actually, you require multi-hazard early warning system. So that I will request all our participants that you please go on looking at the literature coming in, the vulnerability, the risk actually, and highlight in the media also, like where are the Northeast part vulnerable? Like we were reading, 80% of the district or population lives in the floodplain, Brahmaputra floodplain, because of the accessibility to various like agriculture, water, and all those things. So that you do actually. And then of course that each event, each monsoonal event, like Mumbai event, you cannot compare it with the Northeast event, you cannot compare it with the Srinagar event. They are, specific to those areas actually and those exposures. And our key is the seamless monitoring and forecasting. That means we start from say seasonal scale, we go to sub-seasonal scale, then we go to routine daily scale. And of course, progress of monsoon 2022 and prediction I'll come. I'll just go through the slides very rapidly. Like monsoon, we know it is mainly reversal of the wind. That is the things. And monsoon and our lives is very good. There is a book actually, Monsoon and our culture also. So as we know that everybody wears the celebration. If you travel from east to west, there is a sure event, religious event to welcome the monsoon rainfall. That you can see like in Odisha, Bengal, Bihar, everywhere it is there. And then we know this is the Pranab Mukherjee sir who told that monsoon is the second finance minister because of its it impacts GDP. Like my previous speaker, he has already highlighted that crops and other things, and we know drinking water and all get recharged actually, lake or dams, and we know that hydroelectricity depends on the your energy demand. We know that we ultimately look at the monsoon actually. It should rain, that everybody expect actually. So this is a very good curve from a 2018 publication. If your monsoon will be around the normal things, we don't know, distribution wise should be okay, all these things. Little lower, then there is a kind of a drought or something like that. If you have a more rain, also there is a kind of flood, it is impacting the agriculture. So it's a, if a rain is something like this, it can give a positive change in the income. You have a higher GDP. We know also year-wise, if you see the rainfall plot all India against the GDP or growth also, you will get direct link also. And coming to the rainfall, actually main is the July and August. June actually the rainfall is almost 40%. And coming to this is all India. If you see for Northwest India, it is also again July and August. What I want to tell that the major season is the July-August. If July-August has the issue, then actually the impact start actually. And monsoon always, documented right from 1757. It is more than 300 years where you get the scientific documentation that it is something coming from the southwest. And then it has variability, all scale actually. Like some season may be drought, some season may be flood. And within the season, like this spell, like from yesterday, we start getting subdued rainfall over northwest and parts of central India, reducing the all India rainfall. So this will continue till 26 or 27. So you have 5 days of the subdued rainfall spell. Okay, after 21 or 22nd, you got excess in the week. In the next week, you may get a subdued week also. So that way it is within the season, and of course year to year I told. And basic monsoon system, whenever you talk about the monsoon, we highlight this 7-6 system actually. This is the specific to South Asia. Like how strength is the hitting over Rajasthan and Pakistan. How about the convergence low zone, from Kolkata? Like I told you, if easterly is missing, you don't expect good rain over northern plains. So that happens in this monsoon actually. Even though it is a progressing stage, but we are not getting easterly, and you may not get easterly say up to next 4 days also. So that's the worrying actually. And when you come to the convergence zone, that is our lifeline. When we talk about monsoon, we look only Bay of Bengal wind actually. Arabian Sea has some limitation actually. A wind coming from like Bombay hitting the Himalaya and giving a moisture or rain, it's impossible. You have to get Bay of Bengal current back to the Uttarakhand. So that's the things actually. And then of course this Himalaya are the two component, the Tibetan, because it stands as a plateau, it stands as a barrier. So that's everything to do actually. So sometimes you get Tibet low heating, sometimes you get high heating. It all depends on. And then of course South Indian Ocean is the major component actually, what we call Madagascar, where the wind comes from. If you see the ship log, say document from Madagascar coming to the Somali coast, then from Somali coast they travel to Bombay. You see Vasco da Gama and others, you see the ship logs. The monsoon is well documented when they started the British ship log. So that wind comes from Madagascar southwesterly, southeasterly, then turn at Somali and comes to Bombay coast southwesterly. So that is their actually route actually. So we take these as the monsoon, whenever monsoon will be strong or weak, all depends on how intense is heat low, how intense is monsoon convergence, how intense is Tibetan high over Tibetan plateau, how intense is the high pressure over Madagascar, and how intense is the upper level easterly actually. You may get, many times you must be thinking actually, like westerly. Kabhi suno westerly, middle latitude westerly. Abhi tak hum bol rahe. You whole Delhi and others upper level is westerly. So you require easterly, strong easterly, Sri Lanka, South India. So those are the component. And low level, I already told that once you have a strong high over this Madagascar, then your strong wind will come to Bombay. So this upper level is the blue, lower level is the red actually. If all actually focus on this figure self-explain what is South Asia monsoon. You get a strong outflow from a high pressure. High pressure means you have a low temperature, southern hemisphere now, and we have a warm in the northern hemisphere because it is the sun is in our hemisphere. So from Madagascar, you get a wind turn and as I told, southeasterly. So ships were following this path actually. You know, like this they will follow, like this, all these they will follow, and you get up to Bombay coast, lower level westerly actually. Okay, and this wind must go and hit the mountain as a southwesterly, becoming easterly. So that never happens. This is in all through it is southwesterly and coming to Assam. Your at best you get something like Gorakhpur, some 10 kilometer, 5 kilometer. That also not purely easterly. So you require Calcutta easterly, you require Ranchi easterly, you require Lucknow easterly, you require Delhi easterly wind. So that should happen. That is the ideal monsoon pattern. So the red is the lower level. So what do you get? You get a high pressure over Madagascar. You get a strong wind like this red bar in the lower level hitting the Bombay. You get a easterly convergence. We call actually this is the monsoon convergence zone. Whenever you refer to why Delhi has a heavy rain, whenever you refer why Punjab, Haryana has a heavy rain, because you have a convergence easterly. I have written here, C, cyclone, red is the lower level. And in the upper level, as the, we know mass conservation. So a voluminous wind goes to the north, the same wind returns at the upper level. This blue is the upper level. So it rises over mountain or it hits the mountain, then reverse back to the southern hemisphere. So the blue is actually upper level. I am telling more than something like 10,000 feet or something like 15,000 feet. So they all go and as the anticyclone, they come back. So this is the common monsoon pattern. So whenever, little higher we discuss, we educate ourselves, these systems should be discussed actually. It's not like that, always climate change or something like that, El Nino or something. No, Indian condition or Indian ocean or, our hemisphere is self-sufficient to catch the monsoon. You need not go to Atlantic oscillation, El Nino, they may be a part, but like you look at Indian Ocean surface temperature, why they matters actually monsoon variability. Because of this component actually, 6 or 7 component I talked about. So these I need not tell, MJO, that is the kind of equatorial oscillation. If you take rainfall, say each, when you travel, this is actually all must understand that what he is doing, the whole northern hemisphere, he put in the 8th sector actually. This is something like 40 degree, something like 0 degree. Okay, from 0 degree to 90 degree, you get a wave moving across, moving around the something like 30 degree or 20 degree or 10 degree. One completely wave moves actually. And when this wave enters to Indian Ocean, like we tell 2, 3, 4, like presently MJO is at 2. So in 4 or 5 days, it will be favoring more convection because it will moving more to the Pacific. So this 1, 2, 3 is the Indian Ocean actually. So if it is over here, like, from 31st to 10 June, we don't have a rain because it was in the, in the, like something like USA or Atlantic, somewhere it was there. So this is a kind of wind and precipitation wave that moves near equator. So when it reaches to near Indian Ocean, it gives good rainfall over Indian region. So that is the very basic actually. MJO plays a major role in monsoon variability, day-to-day variability. Like we know 15 days dry spell, 15 days wet spell. If you analyze the Indian rainfall, say core region like central India, like Rajasthan, Gujarat, it takes actually dry spell, wet spell, dry spell, wet spell. So whenever dry spell comes, one should look at it, how intense it is likely, but it is not anomaly actually. Okay, so that way it is there. And then these systems should be seen in the, like, if you see the something like Bureau of Meteorology of Australia, that is a very good site. Please look into it actually, to look into the climate forcing for Indian monsoon. So we know MJO is one, he is showing how the equatorial wave is moving from west to east with high convection and low convection. So as you know, any wave has a trough and ridge, descent and ascent. So this is a kind of whenever it is in the ascent phase over equatorial Indian Ocean, our Indian monsoon is in a good phase actually. So that is the kind of definition. And you know IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole, that also you can look into it also. From this site, I will not, we know what is El Nino, rise of the sea surface temperature, that you can look from the site, similar site. So, and coming to the the monsoon part, like if you look to the Indian monsoon, we have certain terminology. So as I told you, like light rain, very light rain, moderate rain, heavy, very heavy. So there are things, you look at our SOP, you just search Google, SOP, IMD. So all the conditions we have prescribed, and extremely heavy rainfall is 204 millimeter or more. And when we tell cloud burst, the rainfall is more than 100 millimeter per 1 hour. So if we look, actually we have 4,000 stations. Almost each district has good number of stations for rainfall reporting. Temperature reporting, we have only 250. Each district we don't have, but rainfall we have actually. And if we look, we know that heavy rainfall is over the Himalaya, over the Western Ghat, over the Central India and East Coast. And if you increase the amount like very heavy, it is more confined to the Himalayas and West Coast. So if you say 200 millimeter or more, it is more on the Assam Meghalaya or something like Uttarakhand or Jammu Kashmir, something like West Coast, starting from North Kerala to Gujarat coast. And these are the area where we have a regular heavy rainfall by monsoon depression along the Central India. And cloudburst, we know it's mostly in the Himalaya region and sometimes from the Western Ghat. And cloudburst, as I told, the definition is basic. Actually, we must remember it is 100 millimeter only, and droplet size associated with it is high actually. Monsoon and climate change. This is a very well studied. All India rainfall does not show any change. It's a good signal actually. If you take total, it will not show any change. But if you take area wise, we know actually parts of Central India or something like Gujarat, you know, like Central India, like covering this area, this is reducing. This is the paper from IITM, and Gujarat is decreasing. If you take total precipitation, but if you take extremely heavy rainfall, there are pockets where it is increasing. This you know it, that the dry spell or the kind of, you know, rainy days, they have been reduced, but intensity of the rain, number of intense rainfall event has been high actually in recent year. And these are our rainstorms actually, system, monsoon depression. Whenever any rain over East Coast, Central India, it is attributed to monsoon depression. We don't have any system till today in 2022. And these are the monsoon depression. As you know that monsoon depressions are decreasing, whereas low pressure systems are increasing. This is we published in Current Science also. And also similar things came in the IITM report also. We have several publications on the monsoon disturbances, its frequency over Indian region. So that you can get drought also, you can get how it has been varying. These all are available in our, you know, report actually. One MOES book is there, climate change and, you know, Indian monsoon also, monsoon system and all those things. So I'll coming directly to the impact part actually. As you know, heavy rainfall has a major primary impact, secondary impact. Primary impact we know. This is flood or immediate actually. Ekdam aaya aur bah gaya. But say, you know, the impact which, you know, NGO and others are doing, like you will have a food impact, immediate food access of the people suffering like Northeast India, and also the drinking water and all those impacts. So our prediction system must include these secondary and tertiary impact. That is the way the other parts of the, you know, developed world is going actually. So we know this. Our target is, you know, to get the rain hazard, to get the exposure and do the vulnerability. States are doing also, government and some NGO are doing. We are also doing in that way. And I will not go details on this, but one thing I must tell that much talk about, you know, the monsoonal event or the impact is that if you go 100 years back, there were no exposure, no human being, nothing. Heavy rainfall were occurring over Himalaya, eastern, western, wherever, Western Ghat. But once you are like, you know, like Lavasa project or something like that, they become hazards actually. They become, you know, the exposure actually increase. Like what is the, you know, once people started living, once they built up the environment, once they built up the, you know, offices, and there is no end. People are building more, you know, offices in the eco-sensitive and, you know, Ghat areas. This is my personal comment actually. So that way they become more hazardous actually. So you can see actually, and you can put, you know, you can reduce the vulnerability. Like, you know, you put a flood boundary wall, solid flood boundary wall. So you may be exposed, but you know, your resistance is you have done a solid, you know, resilience actually. So that way we can reduce also, even though the exposure increases or hazard increases, but vulnerability can decrease. So, so that way we want to give actually how they are affecting with respect to district. So what we are doing, we have defined the terms and we have taken all the exposure. So we are giving now risk-based prediction. One is the event, severity of the event, and its, you know, likelihood of the occurrence. If the occurrence is very sure, then we keep red color to say house, to say socioeconomic, all these things. So this is the way we are doing presently actually. So that way,
Sir, I'm really sorry to interrupt. If
yeah,
you
I will
could wrap
just
up,
come so that more discussion can be there. I'll just come to
Yeah.
the the slide where we want one thing I can show you, like Bombay case. So Bombay, we have come out very with the Bombay rain monitoring system. We have some 150 station, and also very kind of like ward basis prediction. So we presently with the municipality corporation of Mumbai, we give a word based prediction, like red color means inundation level is very high and the likelihood also very high. So that way real time we are operating also, particularly Mumbai, we want to do Mumbai kind of system in each district. So for that, actually, this is the slide where I can just spend 1 hour, 1 minute actually. You can see this, the kind of discussion you got actually. You get the hazard at the past data, you supplement with the prediction also. And real time you give the warning actually. So this is the, multi-layering of the past hazard data and existing exposure with specific to the prediction system. You have a rain prediction, so you have a inundation hazard prediction also, flood hazard model also. So you have a weather model. So it is an integrated solution. So in that you go on delivering your product, to population, to energy, to health, to water, to agriculture. So that is actually our objective actually. So for this we have started working, and that way I hope the things will be improved in coming days. And if you see the monsoon part, if you see 2022 monsoon. So we are actually held up here only. What was there on around 20 June. Thereafter, we have not moved. And we are not giving also next 3 days we will move by. Because as I told that it is, we don't get easterly and monsoon actually it's subdued. The Northwest India anyhow will not get pre-monsoon rain till 26. And Central India also will not, particularly the North MP, Uttar Pradesh will not improve. And if you see total rainfall, as I told you, the variability is very high. One side you get Northeast India, very high rainfall. Other side is Central India and the Northwest India, you get the rainfall the other way around. Actually, the amount is very less. You can see actually, like if you see Northeast India, you get something like 32% plus. And when you come to Northwest India, the deficiency has reduced, but not much reduction. Central India still you get deficient. Peninsular India also something not much, encouraging. And if you see normal to excess Indian area wide or subdivision, we get 23 plus 7, 30 and this 31. Around 61% of India is in the normal or excess category. 39% is in the deficient category. So that way the rainfall has come. Thanks to last week, there was a good rainfall. And regarding our prediction, we stand with this actually, that normal. And then this is the distribution, mostly particularly this part actually, is Central India part and Kerala. So that we told, and we will be getting the update by June end also, around June 30 or 1st July, we will giving you update also. And then coming to so that is our system actually. We go for April, we go for May, and then we give monthly forecast. So already you have May 30, another will have June 30. Coming to the, that's the review of the current monsoon. And regarding the Delhi advance, yeah, sometimes it is very delayed. This you can see dates when we have June and when we have, like blue color, it tells actually by June end monsoon comes. But if you see like last year, you have to wait till July 12 or something like that. It's a very high delay was there. And that happens actually. Okay.
We might have to stop now and come back to this later.
So this I just wanted to convey the objective where we are working. Right. Yeah. So really actually it has been delayed, but the agenda which we finalized was that only, that we will give a brief on our existing system and future plan, so that our media friends they will appreciate actually, and also basic part of the monsoon where it is available. So this is a complete package, and I really took long time, but no doubt I tried to convey.
No, thank you so much. I think that was very helpful. And I'm sure the package that you and IMD share will also be very helpful in understanding, particularly the systems that dictate the monsoonal wind flows and the convergence of the easterlies and the westerlies. If we have time, it would be great to come back to the deficiencies seen on the West Coast and the lack of monsoon lows so far that are there, and of course no depression as you mentioned. I think even when we are talking about the monsoon, it's been fairly recognized now that overall levels have remained in that long-term trend, and there haven't been any big changes that have been observed. The worrying aspects have been to do with the distribution, both the time as well as the geographical spatial distribution of the monsoon, of the rains, and the concentration over certain places. You mentioned the work that IMD has done especially in the agrometeorology and providing specialized focus has been very useful, and has been one of the big pluses that have been recognized. That also directly relates to the vulnerability that has been that has been flagged repeatedly in many reports, and the requirement for adaptation. And I would like to bring Avinash, if you can come in to kind of give some insight on. Well, there are long-term changes that are projected, long-term vulnerabilities that have been flagged, and there are also these short-term episodic kind of events that actually bring out or are captured as events that are causing loss and damage and reducing the productivity and so on. I want to know how well these have been incorporated in any kind of policy framework. How well have we been able to address them beyond the fact of giving the required early warnings or the required real-time data to inform sowing decisions or harvesting decisions that can be responded to by farmers. So if you could just give a brief overview of how that entire arena stands right now. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. First of all, it was very informative, Dr. Janamani, and what Devender also highlighted was quite pertinent. Without further delay, I can promise you that I'm not going to take much longer time. I'm going to just present 3 slides, and those 3 slides will help us understand kind of how and where do we activity and adaptive capacity. So here exactly, I'm going to just move my slides. So who we are, for people who don't know us, I'm Avinash and I represent the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, where I do or lead the climate risk and adaptations team. And is this slide moving? I can't see this slide.
No, can't see your screen yet.
Yeah, I'll just stop my sharing so that.
Sir, I stopped yours. Avinash, it's saying yours is still loading, I think. Maybe internet is slow and it's taking a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
But your desktop is coming.
Okay, I am not able to see the desktop either. Just that you've started screen sharing, but no content. If it works, maybe you can send a link or an email, and we can share it from our end.
No, you come out of sharing. You come out of sharing and again share. Okay.
I think Avinash is frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. Okay, that's all right. He's back. Avinash, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, and I hope my screen is now visible.
Still not on my end, but now it is.
Is it this? Okay, perfect. So this is where India as a country stands today. We have been trying to develop a climate risk atlas at a granular level. And where do we stand? 75% of Indian districts are extreme event hotspots, and 40% of them are showcasing a swapping trend. And exactly that is what Dr. Jinamani has highlighted, that the variability is spanning across. And when I say swapping trend, 40% of Indian districts are showcasing, which were traditionally flood-prone areas are becoming drought-prone areas, or drought-prone areas are becoming flood-prone areas. And monsoon has got an important role to play, because what we capture is all the three kinds of drought we speak: agriculture, meteorological, as well as hydrological drought. And then in terms of numbers, economic terms, more than 89.7 billion has been kind of lost and could have been saved if we would have had good adaptive capacity and effective preparedness. That also includes impact-based early warning system. And Dr. Janamani, I'm been told that IMD is now upgrading its early warnings to impact-based early warning for some hazards to start up with. Heat wave last year, this year also we had some impact-based early warnings. Now, 60 to 70% of our infrastructures that we are building, because we are aspiring to become a 5 trillion economy, and whatever we are kind of aspiring in terms of 5 trillion economy, I think 60 to 70% of our infrastructures are also at risk, and that's a quite huge number. Now, we also came up with a climate vulnerability index, and this climate vulnerability index that we released prior to COP26, we could see at a district level that 6 of our climatic zones are kind of vulnerable. 27 states are vulnerable. More than 463 districts, as per 2011 census, are vulnerable, and 638 plus million people are vulnerable. What does it mean actually? It means that 8 out of 10 Indians living here in our districts are extremely vulnerable. 5 out of 20 Indians are highly vulnerable to all the 3 extreme events: cyclone, flood, and droughts, and which also includes the associated events like extreme heavy rainfall, storm surges, so on and so forth. But what is more important is, and I'll also link again to what Dr. Janamani showed in that slide, where he gave a differentiation between exposure as well as risk. 45% of our landscapes have been disrupted. That's a huge number. And these are triggering microclimatic changes, whereas the climate change is triggering all of this. But the landscape disruption is an important part to think of. Yeah, this is how, if you have to humanize monsoons, then this is how the multifaceted monsoons are there. Some of us, we really get cherished when monsoon comes in, right? We try to kind of get into weight, smell that wet soil, but it has its different sides. And this is how a wicked problem like managing monsoons has been. And one of the important problems is that technically a wicked problem like this, where contending parties, all the stakeholders, cannot even agree in defining what the problem is. For some, it's an agricultural drought. For some, it's a productivity issue. For some of us, it is actually numbers that we are seeing where the variability is. For some of us, it might be inundation. For some of us, it is a different problem altogether, that we might have water not coming out in our taps, so on and so forth. So what the problem is, let alone agreeing on the solution, is something that we need to look at. And adaptive capacity cannot be actually based on the textbook knowledge of engineering, and probably with the market economics integrated, what has been the normal approach, can't solve this problem. So we need to get out of that comfort zone and think out of the box how we want to address monsoon. And clearly what this webinar is doing is trying to bring meteorological authorities, practitioners like us, as well as the right stakeholders who communicate, because I can see in the participant list, some of dear friends from media are also there, have joined in. So it is trying to convene that message, and this is what is the starting point. Now, how are the changing patterns? I will put down in terms of numbers, because this is a bit different to what Dr. Janamani has said. As per IMD's classification, we have thresholds at India level. But what we are trying to see is India is a diverse country. Its geography, topography is differentiating, as well as the climate processes and the physical processes are also different. So we tried kind of hypothecating by having close collaborations and discussions with IMD actually and NDMA. If we have different thresholds or district level thresholds, then how does the numbers look like? in terms of how much rainfall is received. The blanket cover is that 76% of the total annual rainfall during southwest monsoons primarily provide us rainfall to India. And that's where we are. India is currently growing through a dry. The number of dry days are increasing, but the number of incessant and erratic rainfall days are kind of increasing. And that's also is kind of what Dr. Janamani has also highlighted. And since 2012, if you have to look at only in the last decade, then across there has been an increase in the number of extreme heavy rainfall days across 85% increase in terms of IMD stations that have reported. So these numbers are actually kind of a grave concern, but what it needs is right kind of adaptive capacity. And this is where our set of adaptive capacity is. In terms of governance framework, each district should have a district disaster management plan annually updated. But unfortunately, none of these zones in India have a high adaptive capacity currently. 5 out of 6 zones in India have low adaptive capacity to extreme hydromet disasters, which also includes extreme heavy rainfall events. And East zone has got moderate adaptive capacity, all thanks to the best kind of early warning systems that has been ramped up, as well as the kind of early warning, effective, critical, and kind of disaster shelters, those have been prepared. So our adaptive capacity have gone quite up. And only 32% of Indian districts have got an updated district disaster management plan, which is updated until 2019. This has to be done on an annual basis. So clearly we have miss. But while there is a miss, and all of us have been talking about, Devendra has rightly highlighted about agriculture sector to be more impacted. Yes, agriculture, no doubt, is going to be impacted. Food security is going to be impacted of whatever aspirations are. But other sectors, the soft and hard sectors, are also going to be kind of impacted. If you look at a blanket cover number, then 3% of our GDP is going to be impacted by a flood, by an extreme flood or drought event. And currently we are approaching to those kind of events on an year-on-year basis. 1% of change in monsoon rainfall will result to 0.34% change in agricultural GDP alone. A normal monsoon, or what loosely we use as a good monsoon, kind of can increase the GDP from transport, storage, trade, and communication sectors by 1 and 3% in the agricultural dominated states, because the supply chain is going to be climate proof. Then our electricity generation is also going to be impacted. It can decrease substantially by as between 13% if we have a weakening monsoon, and the trends are between 1980 to 2016. There has been a decline as well. The water scarcity also closing around 14 to 20 of the thermal power plants were shut down around 2013 to 2016 only because of water scarcity problems. So clearly our fans, our bulbs that we want to burn in are going to be dented if we don't have a good monsoon. And then the hydroelectric power sources of 40% are going to be impacted. So numbers are of grave concern, but what do we do as collectively? What is the starting point? We need to have 3 kind of innovation that can build the adaptive capacity as well as response capacity, and that is primarily around which is covered around system innovations. System innovation calls for having policies, actions, and schemes, not just through blanket covers. We need to have localized and integrated kind of granular climate risk assessments into these policies, actions, and plans. And I have read one of the in one of the discussions where Anjal had also highlighted that we should have a different entity who can manage disaster better. We had recommended during our climate vulnerability assessment of a climate risk commission. And then with system innovations, we need to have innovative frameworks. It is not just the climate science that has to be integrated. It is about the adaptive capacity that need to be integrated into these policies, plans. And then comes the technological innovations. If we can kind of refer to USGS or NASA forecast, IMD is no less. IMD forecast are really great forecast. We have got precise level of forecast, accurate forecast. What we have not been able to do is to get some long-term forecasting. I mean, 15 days and above. But the near-term forecasts have been, short-term forecasts have been precise and accurate. And that is why as a country, we have been able to save our lives, but saving livelihoods, infrastructure, and economic sectors still remains a challenge. So that technological innovations need to be integrated. And then finally, we need to have financial innovations that can provide us just transition and can ensure job growth and sustainability, increase investments in modern cost-cutting technologies, as well as increase investment across what I highlighted about system as well as technology. So with that, I will stop and looking forward to have a more kind of rich conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. That was very helpful to lay out those components, particularly as they should be, incorporated into any kind of package of interventions that come up. Also, I'd like to remind remind all the listeners that if you have any questions, please do put them into the question and answer chat box or keep them ready. You can raise your hands later and we will try to keep 10-15 minutes at the end to address those questions. And now that that's out of the way, coming back, so you mentioned you laid out these different components, and particularly as it pertains to like agriculture, there was one long-term or 10-year-long project, almost more than 5-year-long project called for the National Innovations on Climate Resilient Agriculture. And I don't know whether that we have been able to scale that up. It was very piecemeal for the most part, trying to figure out what works where, and how that can be kind of popularized in other places that also have similar kinds of vulnerabilities. I'd like to get Dr. Anjal in into the discussion here. How has this, how have we been able to, are there technocratic interventions or technological interventions that have worked so far? How have these changing patterns been impacting cropping patterns, cropping choices, the amount of inputs that need to be put in, and what is the role of the government here? What is the role of public officials in this whole process?
Yeah, thanks, Srishan. I'll be very brief because I know that the time is till 1 o'clock and we also need to have discussion. So I'll be very brief. Okay, so just to answer your question, I'll look at it from the perspective of the Himalayan region that I have worked in, and I'll give you some insights from there. First of all, the changing patterns of especially the variability in rainfall has been bringing drudgery to people who are staying in Himalayan region. This is a place which is millions of people are already living, and they're very, very risky environment under which they're operating. And you've seen what is happening in the Assam floods. As we are talking, Bangladesh is reading under one of the greatest disaster it has ever seen in the recent recorded history. Bangladesh is more known for what we call the cyclones, but flooding in the upper northwest region is something that is unprecedented. Now, coming to the question, what people are doing, I will focus on 3 points. One is that definitely there's a huge what we call the critical stress condition that they go through. Every time the monsoon variability happens or any climate risk strikes us, we find that the criticality of the problem stresses the present system in which people are living in. Agriculture has been a totally disaster for people in a sense that they are not going to rely on this. So people are migrating. They are migrating to nearest possible or the farthest possible places. And it is mostly because of the gender structure that we have. It's mostly the men who are migrating and they live in abysmal conditions in the nearest cities. And so from the IPCC report, what we have found that the women are doing actually triple shift. They get up as early as 4 o'clock in the morning and sleep late in the night. They have to they have to work at the household level, also in the local economy, agriculture, looking after kids, looking after the elderly. Everything is on the women's shoulders. So that is number one. Anyway, women were forefront of the economy in the mountains regions, but this is something that is bringing huge drudgery to them. What is changing in the agriculture region? The study that I was involved in, I'll try to point out points from there, which how people or communities are coping. And here I'm talking about in a slow onset of disasters, not the high rainfall issues and all that we're going through. When the slow onset in which climate is changing, what is happening? So first is they're adapting to new techniques and new practices, and there are a lot of things happening. And I would like to focus on these solutions parts also, because I think there's enough of problem that we have seen and we have analyzed. What is the solution? And I'll focus on this. So first is definitely about new agriculture practices and techniques had been innovated on ground, and there has been some of them have been recorded, some of them doesn't come even to the forefront of the political and the policy making process. Second is the new variety of crops that is suited to the changing climate. For example, the middle regions of the Himalayan regions, they have never been growing some of the vegetable crop which they start growing as things have started warming up. So some changes are happening there. Sometimes it is bringing some more benefits also. It's not only about slow onset of climate change, is bringing some benefit for people who actually those areas that were in a short term basis, right? And third is, which is very, very important, is that the timing, the season agriculture shift has been shifted to about 15 to 20 days, sometime in a month, depending on the variability where you are in the region. And that means that they are bringing changing the time of the planting of crops and then coping with the changing rainfall patterns. And that's the most stressful condition that people are living in, because when you're sowing rice and then if you want the rain to come, rain will not come. As you have seen, the previous speakers have talked about that we are about 40 to 50% of areas still rain-fed area. That means we look up to the rain to give us our the entire supply of water as well as food for the year, and that is where it is being most stressful. Let me just come to the point that you have made about the what can be done again on this. I think that the problem is so huge and the response of the government is so minuscule. And let me not even mince my word saying here that we need a separate ministry for climate change. I've been telling this for a long time. I think the present dispensation in which present way in which climate change issues are dealt with, it's very, very fragmented. Climate change is one of the 20 divisions within the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change Department. The climate, the new age information and the new age skills that is required to combat climate change is just not there at this moment. And that's where I'll end with. I'll be very happy to answer questions. Over to you.
Right, thank you so much. The mention of the fragmentation is something that we actually time and time touch upon time and again, whether it's with when we are talking about energy or climate impacts, vulnerability, how to budget for climate change, all of these things. So that's a very useful point. I think we are at that final last 15 minutes. So maybe we can take this 15 minutes to just answer questions that come up. The first one is one that's been put by Karuna Sharma in the chat box. Talks about the loss of crops due to the latest spell of flooding in Assam. And asks how is this likely to affect food supply chains in India, how it's likely to affect food prices in India. I would like to, in fact, add a little bit to it and try and find out a little bit more about how sowing has been. We know that the heat wave had an impact on wheat production, and there were wheat exports were banned. Now there are talks about rice exports being banned. This is an important season or important period for the sowing of the Kharif crop. So maybe I'll address this to Devendraji, but anyone who has anything to add to it, please do raise your hands and I'll incorporate. All the questions are open to all the panelists, but Devendraji, if you have some insights to share.
Well, yes, the Kharif sowing has been affected, one, because of a dry spell that continues in some parts, and also because of the extreme rainfall that the northeast areas have witnessed. Otherwise, in the rest of the country, the sowing is in the process. I think it may be too early to work out what kind of loss that we're going to finally figure out. But yes, there is a cause for worry, because as I said earlier, in Maharashtra, there has been a drop of 41% as far as the rain is concerned. And in the eastern areas, there have been a huge flooding, 4.7 million people affected by the floods. And we still have to assess what is the crop loss that has taken place. To this question, whether the prices will zoom up or not, I think I'm not hoping that the prices will go up much, because we have comfortable food stocks with us, and I think that's one of the prerequisite when we talk of climate change. As I was repeatedly saying, that we need to be self-sufficient and have adequate food stocks with us. The other part is that yes, the cropping patterns do undergo a change when we see the rainfall pattern operating for a couple of years. And we have seen in this country, like our friend mentioned about the Himalayas, we also know that in the upper reaches of Himalayas, the apple crop has shifted from the middle region to the upper region, and which means the pastoral communities there have benefited now, or are benefiting now from moving on to these more reliable crops and so on, horticulture crops. And we see also across the country a shift from crops to primarily to horticulture crops. And that there are two reasons for it. One, of course, we can very well see the monsoon playing a role. But the second one, of course, is also the government's policies that provide more impetus or more thrust on horticulture expansion. So both the factors together, I think much of the problem or much of the difficulties that we encounter, as somebody mentioned, one of our colleagues mentioned, that there has to be adequate policy approach to ensure that we do not end up, victimizing the farmer still further from these kinds of abnormalities.
Thank you so much. I think that helps a lot. Do you have an opinion on, there is always this argument that especially when supply chains are stressed, farmers should also get a share of the higher prices that come in. So there should be better access, which protectionist measures or these measures kind of avoid. Is there? Do you have an opinion or an insight to share on such a thing?
Well, I think if what I get correctly from what you're saying, we have been advocating that there has to be a guaranteed price for farmers. Why this is very important is because if you look at the kind of products that enter the markets, all industrial products come with a price tag. It's always agriculture produce which comes into the market which doesn't have a price tag. The markets then decide the price that it has to offer to the farm produce, as a result of which we know there's a ruthless exploitation by supply chains across the globe. The farming community, not only in India, but the farming community in America, Europe, and the rest of the rich world is also, in severe distress. And that is happening despite the markets being operative there for so long. So the point I'm trying to make is that there has to be a mechanism by which we can assure at least that the farmers not only get a living wage or a living price, but also we try to see that their livelihoods are adequately taken care of. That is the kind of a guaranteed price. Now, for example, just in the present context, we saw the disruptions happening because of pandemic. Look at Maruti car. Prices have gone up 3 times in 1 year. But if you try to see the wheat price was announced in September, and since the harvest took place, there were lots of changes in the input prices, because of the petrol prices going up, the diesel prices going up, fertilizer, and so on and so forth. But there is no increase in the prices for wheat crop, and I think that is the kind of inequality that we see, or the kind of discrimination we see against agriculture. So there is a need to now get out of that market, dependence to providing farmers with a guaranteed price.
Thank you so much. The next one is from Balsher Sidhu. It's addressed to both Anjal and Devendraji, but maybe Dr. Anjal, you can start. What are the 3 policies you would recommend to the government to make agriculture more climate resilient? And I think the next one from Nivedita is also like a follow-up to it, that there are these solutions, they've been forwarded for many times, they've been compiled time and again, but what about the implications it has on the political economy, and how, how there is a requirement for some political will to one, remove inefficient practices, and to encourage more adaptive capacity to be built.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll, part of this, I'm sure Devendra is more qualified to answer it, but I'll just, say that there are enough policies. I think the problem is in the way we are reaching out to the farmers, the last person, especially the small and the marginal farmers, that information is not reaching. And I've been extensively doing field work in the Himalayan regions, and I find that the people are adapting on their own, and whether you call it adaptation, maladaptation, or whatever it is, there's no support, literally no support from the Agriculture Extension Ministry on combating climate change. And that is because the way in which this ministry is organized, they have no lateral entry to understand even climate change impact on the agriculture. You will give me any, and I'm sure Devendra ji will tell us more, any information on their website on how climate change is impacting and what can be done to save our farmers from the vagaries of the extreme climate event. So I totally agree with Nimandada ji that the policies are enough. I think we need to, this time for action, we need to get into action, and that means that we need to definitely carve out a special, a Ministry of Climate Change which provides this information. I don't expect this from coming from agriculturists. Maybe we can have a dialogue, but something that who are climate scientists, people who are working on climate change should give this information, but there's no space at this moment, and one single window where we can actually cover all that stuff. That's where I would say that the large institutional changes is required at the central level and with the state apparatus, which provides this kind of information and works with the different ministries, which are the parent ministries, and provide them the information which helps them to cope with this. And that is where I will end. Thank you.
Well, I would agree.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would agree with what has been said, and I think it is true that climate change is going to be a severe problem that the farmers are going to be encountered with in the days or months to come. But the government is not properly equipped or I would say adequately prepared to handle that. Even when we talk about technologies, we have a fascination for climate smart agriculture and so on. It's the same corporate agriculture which was prevalent earlier, which is now being pushed again. So what I'm trying to say is business as usual is not the way forward. I would rather say that there should have been some indication on the lines of what European Union has done last week. It has announced 100 billion pounds, 100 billion euros budget for eco restoration, where it's talking about restoring 20% of the biodiversity and so on, or the wetlands, 30% of the wetlands by the year 2030. Now that is a kind of eco restoration that has to take place, and it has to be in sync with the agriculture, because agriculture will be holding on or providing the solutions which can address the issue of climate change or mitigate climate change. For instance, let's be very clear that 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions comes from agriculture. Now, extending the same kind of farming system is further going to exacerbate the crisis. I think we have to move out of that paradigm or that framework to move towards agroecological farming systems and so on and so forth. And there are answers there. When we say technology doesn't mean it is branded or it is coming with a gadget. Technology is also, regeneration agriculture is also regenerative technology, involves regenerative technology like you name it. There are technologies for agroecology. These are all technologies which, of course, are required. It's not that only we require companies or brands to come up with their the machines or the kind of implements that they are trying to sell. So I'm not in favor of climate smart agriculture, quote unquote, the way it is being promoted. Yes, we need climate smart agriculture. And before I end, just one point to illustrate that point, that bigger issue. When tsunami struck, as you know, the southern coast, and in that southern coast, the salt intrusion was there, salt water intrusion, and they found out that there are 2 or 3 salt resistant traditional varieties which actually withstood the impact. So that is what we were required. We have those varieties, we have those strains with us. It is time to go back and to find out what could be fit into the climate resilience that we are talking about.
there is a question: what happened to NICRA? And some of the interventions that you were mentioning were also interventions that were included in NICRA. Is there an update on what has happened to it? There seems to be no news for the past couple of years at least.
Yes, we are all looking forward to if there is some development on that front. I think, as you mentioned, we are all waiting for some changes to take place. Yeah.
Krishan, I'll just tell you one just 30-second response here. See, I'm now logging in from Punjab. I had done a last 5 days I spent with the farmers in Punjab, asking them what is happening there, and they're reporting us. And I'm sure when the agriculture census come, or annual reporting comes, it'll come out very distinctly that about 20% of the crop loss that farmers had from the early heat waves here. And I asked them, well, who among the agriculture extension system has come to talk to you, or have you got any information? There's zero information of farmers. And this, we're talking about a region which is one of the most prosperous region, which has extensive programs here. So imagine what happens in Meghalaya, imagine what happens in Kerala, imagine what happens in Bihar. So this is the state of situation that we are in. And I'm really sorry to say that we are just not geared up to the challenge that we have at this moment.
Okay, so there is one question from Krishan Murari. It's been addressed to Devender ji, but I think Avinash and Dr. Anjal, you would also be able to answer this. Besides warning systems, we of course have had for a long time seasonal migration because of floods in Assam and parts of Bihar, notably, and West Bengal. Now, what else can be done to resolve these issues of seasonal flooding in terms of at the policy level? Are there solutions for this?
Well, I think disaster relief is, of course, one major component that we need to build on. But also, more importantly, lots of people believe that, when seasonal flooding, or let's say freak weather freak weather phenomena takes place, and we have suddenly flooding taking place, or we also have we have seen when the hailstorm strike. I find lots of people asking me or writing to me, why aren't the farmers prepared? Now, what can you do when you expect a hailstorm to strike, or when the hailstorm suddenly strikes? You can't have a net thrown around over the crop so to protect the crop losses. I think what people also need to understand is that farmers, as was mentioned earlier by our friend, that farmers have been trying whatever local permutation combinations they can afford to address these crises of freak weathers or sudden weather operations affecting their farming systems. And often they have to incur huge losses also, because as was said repeatedly, that this area remains a very big challenge, unless of course the number of suicides increase in a big way, and then the governments have to be forced to come in and help the farming community. But yes, generally the issue of sudden flooding and crop destruction from hailstorms and so on. In the case of crops like apple, for instance, where of course hailstorm is a big issue, they have hail guns and so on enacted now or erected, so that can address the problem. But in the case of crops, agriculture crops, it's quite a difficult proposition. So this is where I find the disaster management or crop insurance is the way forward.
Thank you. Janamani ji, you have your hand up. Do you want to add something? You're on mute, sir.
So I just, we were very much, or we will be very much fascinated, to show one slide only on this, part, how you can bring, the people from the, routine vulnerable area, which is worrying everybody actually. We have to find, some kind of things, livelihood and so many things, attachment and others. One side is that, people come and they are, settling, and because of the lack of whatever you call the financial affordability, all these things. But they know actually, this is the photo actually from a coastal area, and anytime, the cyclone comes, hits their house, but same father and daughter, start constructing a new one. So that way, it is actually government agent also, to make, hazard safety, or to bring more, houses, more family from the vulnerable area actually, to guide them. And in that regard, I'll tell you, like Chennai case, if you see the kind of flooding in 2015, the number of vehicles, they submerged. Their numbers are low actually in 2021. Why? The people themselves are aware that the flyovers or all these things, these auto drivers and those who are not having, regular parking, they brought and put on simply on the bridge actually. Because one side is that because of the flooding, you don't have a traffic actually, because all the city is full closed, but at least their vehicles are saved. That government promote also actually. So these are the, kind of solution the people are getting to actually. So that way, the question is very interesting actually. Can we, make, find, shortcut method, something like that to make the, the suffering less actually. So I don't know. We have to increase the awareness on the same cost if they can ship from the, just near the seashore or just near the river. If they can come, an area they can get actually. But this is I think it kind of awareness and knowledge, definitely I would say. Because I have seen, my uncle's house, I have seen it is just near the river bed. But in 1975 floods, then the government offered them, then shifted just 1 or 2 kilometers, they built the house. So these are all mindset and, the awareness. It can be actually, it may not require a lot of money actually. So I don't know, this has to be debated, and of course some paper has to come also. Yeah, that is my remark. Yeah.
Thank you. Avinash, do you want to add something? Or please.
A quick like 30-second kind of addition to what Dr. Janamani has been saying. Our approach needs to be changed, and our approach so far has been a relief-centric approach. We need to make it response-centric, and that response-centric approach can only come down when we provide granular climate information. Information, what Dr. Janamani's model bring out, has got no meaning for the farmer sitting down in a vulnerable area. What it means for him is how much of the crops are going to be impacted, what exactly are the short-term, long-term, and mid-term steps that has to be taken. And in order to mitigate the risk at a policy level, none of our disaster or climate action plans actually include nature-based solutions, right? So we need to start investing and creating that nature-based solution bouquet so that we can tackle hazards like we are building high-rise shelter homes. In Odisha, we have got shelter homes which can withstand 200 km/h. Similarly, we need to build in biodikes. We need to come up with sand barrages and other nature-based solutions which can restrict our natural ecosystems from getting damaged, and hence the building back better lapse time can actually be lowered. So that has to be response-centric, nature-based solutions, and then adding to what Dr. Janamani and Devendra has just said. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've run 5 minutes over time. We touched on a lot of different diverse subjects here, going from meteorology to trade to adaptation to policy interventions and the rates of success of different policy interventions. What affects that? Each of these, warrants a long discussion by itself, which we're not able to do right now. But hopefully, we'll be able to carry on these discussions in a more focused way moving forward. But thank you all for joining us.
But before you end, I will take actual feedback. Maybe there are like Jayashree and others, if they can give a feedback, so maybe later we can get the feedback. But how it has been helpful, because the basic objective is going from kind of traditional writing like mainly clear sky, something like that, going to write more about the discussion, the vulnerability, impact, awareness, side by side. It will be more helpful and knowledge based. There are enough papers available, but it has to connect it. Yeah.
Absolutely. That the communication of the evidence that is already there is something that is key, and we hope to be able to bridge those gaps, whether it is long-term scientific communication or as well as short-term immediate what's happening right now. and that will be the objective ultimately. So if there are no other last words, we can call it wrap for now. If there are any questions from the audiences that we haven't been able to address, we can send them forward. We will make the recording available for all of you to use as well. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And hope to see you all soon again.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Sri. Thank
Thank you.
you, everyone. Please
Thank
take
you,
care. Bye.
everyone.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.